And then, hello, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for joining the Words Writing Paths workshop. Today, we are discussing decoding the language of publishing and acquisitions. My name is Alyssa. I'm the program deputy for the Word. I'm also a children's book author and your host for today's event. The Word is a nonprofit organization whose mission is storytelling for collective abundance. We center authentic storytelling for BIPOC, LGBTQIA2S+, neurodiverse, and disabled communities. We support and connect writers, publishers, booksellers, and readers. We explore and build collective models for the literacy ecosystem and hold space in community. Our main programs include the Editor-Writer Mentorship program, which is actually accepting applications. So make sure you apply for the mentorship program. Applications close August 4th. So make sure you get them in before that. Another major program is our literacy conference and book fair, which is happening this September. So make sure you attend that. We have both a virtual and an in-person conference this year, which we're really excited about. And our Margins book selling, which is happening this month, actually in July, which includes our BIPOC Bookseller Award. We always have new events and programs like this one, in which we hope you'll check out our website and stay up to date and connected. So today, we will decode the language of publishing and acquisitions. We're going to delve deep into the lexicon of publishing and acquisitions, demystify terms, phrases, and jargon. We're going to talk about advances and royalties and submission guidelines, rights acquisitions. And during this session, we're going to unlock the secrets behind the language of publishing and acquisitions. This specific workshop was requested via our Writing Paths workshop form. So if you would like to request specific workshops, I'm going to put the link in the chat to the form. Please make sure you let us know what type of programming you want to hear from us. We create our programming based on the requests from our audience. And without further ado, I'm so excited to welcome our amazing guest for today. We are so lucky to have Lashanda. She is an editor at Tiny Reparations Books. Previously, she worked at Simon & Schuster, where she was the editor for New York Times bestselling author Sadiqa Johnson's novel, The Yellow Wife, and it's also an NPR Book of the Year. And she acquired Johnson's The House of Eve, which was a Reese's Book Club pick. She also acquired Cecilia Rabis's Everything's Fine. And at Tiny Reparations, some forthcoming titles include bestselling author Renee Windle's Francis's Spectacular Crash and Burn. That sounds super interesting. I had to Google that one. I was like, ooh, crashing and burning. And Barnes and Noble's book club pick Half Blown Rose, author Lisa Cross Smith's novel As You Wish. So you are all in great hands with an editor that has worked with best-selling authors. And so feel free to pop your questions into the chat. We will prioritize those. Though I have some questions prepared that'll get the conversation going and maybe get some of your juices flowing. All right. So first, thank you. Welcome so much for being here with us. And my first question for you is, can you share what your role is as an editor and what a typical day looks like for you? As a children's book author, I learned the hard way, I guess, that editors do so much more than just edit text. And from my experience, they're like the liaison between the author and the illustrator and the marketing team and the legal team. So I don't know how you guys manage your time because there's so much that you all do, but I would love for you to talk a little bit about your role and a typical day for you.
Sure. First off, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here. Role as an editor. It's a big job. Besides acquiring novels, which everyone knows we do, we also, edit them when they come in, but we also write all the copy that you see, whether that's on Amazon with the description, the actual copy that's on the book, catalog copy that you see when you go to our company's website. We also present titles to sales when it's time to launch them for the season so they can sell to their accounts. So we're also salespeople.
Wow.
Where we, try to make the book sound as amazing as possible to get the sales attention so that they can also convey excitement and get a big order for the bookstores.
Wow.
We also present the covers to our art department where we like kind of start the brainstorming of what covers will end up on the jacket. Of course, we work with the author and say like, oh, what books do you like what colors, like what images are you into, but
Right.
we like do the job of presenting to the art team to get them started in hopefully the right direction. We also deal with like the contract stuffs when we do buy a book, talking to finance about like the contract details. Yeah. And
Yes.
that there's a lot that goes into that too, because when you're buying something, you have to look up comps and create the P&Ls for the numbers. So, yeah.
Yeah, and today was part of the reason we started a little late is because you had an exciting day as is
Yeah.
every day for an editor, right? You
Yeah, I'm so sorry about that, by the way. I'm in
No,
two
it's all good.
auctions. I'm in two auctions,
Two?
and the agent was calling me, asking for more details about something, and yeah, it's been a week.
Hopefully you have fun plans for the weekend and
Oh, I'm gonna make some.
good, good. You deserve it. You deserve it. Yeah, I had no idea until I started actually working with my editor, like everything that they're involved in. I was just like, okay, after they're done editing the text, they hand it off and then that's it. But I mean, editors are amazing and I hats off to all of you for all the work that you do. Um, I would also like for you to share some insights into the editorial process and how authors collaborate with you and refine the manuscript because that's like what most people know is at the core of what you all do.
Sure. So every book is different, like depending on what it needs. When it comes in, sometimes I acquire something and it's like almost perfect, and I just have like one or two quick notes. I mean, everything's subjective, right? Almost perfect to me.
Right.
And then there's something that I acquire that I think needs a lot of work, but can definitely get there. So let's say something comes in and needs a lot of work. I usually do the big picture stuff first, like characterization, plot, momentum. And then once things start like getting cleaned up and getting solidified, then we can look at like the line edits and talk about like, oh, like maybe this is a little bit unclear, and maybe you're using too many ands and too many thes. Like, let's maybe insert some commas and have some longer sentences to help with the flow or something like that. But I feel like once you get the big picture stuff out of the way, everything else is easier. And like
Yeah.
that's the heart of the book, right? Like voice, character, what happens, plot,
Right.
and does it move? Does it move people?
And how do you usually give that feedback to the author?
Yes.
Like
Yeah.
for those of us who don't know.
Sure, sure. I always have a hard time breaking it down since I've been in it for so long.
Right, for sure, for sure.
But there's something called editorial memos. So upon my first read of the draft that you send in from your agent that I get excited about and buy, I will edit that version and send you the memo. So basically, I don't know, 10 or 15 page Word doc where I'm just like, okay, you did this great, but you can do this a little better. And let's break it down. Maybe the character of Joey could be enhanced a bit, or I want to hear more about this backstory. And like on page this, and this is a great place for you to expand here. And just putting in some examples of where the work can be done. So I'm not just like telling you what to do, but I'm also helping you out.
Right.
But yeah, something called editorial memo that you would then review as an author. And we would talk about if there was anything that was confusing and would help you put in that next draft.
Amazing. Amazing. And on that note, after there's that memo that's sent out, is there a specific time frame for the author to like get those edits to you by?
I'm sorry, can you say that again?
Yeah, no problem. So after you send out that memo, is there a specific time frame in which the author needs to send you the revisions by?
Right. That also depends on like the season we have in mind. Let's say
Okay.
it's a romance, and we think it's a great beach read, and maybe it came into me, I don't know, let's say 2022, right?
Okay.
And it's fall, and we're trying to get it for summer 23. You always have to think ahead in publishing because we try to give ourselves a year to put
Yeah.
something out into the world. So all the years can get confusing, but usually if I'm buying something in 2022, it's going to come out in 2023, right?
Right.
So if it
Unless
comes
it's a picture
in,
book, which I've learned. Picture books usually are 2 years out because you have to give
yeah, the
the
illustration,
illustrator like
yeah.
about a year to do their job.
Yeah, yeah. That's something else that surprised me. Once I learned, I was like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. But you
Yeah,
would think because it's a shorter book, it'll be faster. But no, art takes a lot of work.
it does. It does.
And it's usually all original artwork. So
Exactly. And it's, I mean, it's fun, like there's a lot of anxiety of like waiting, but it is fun when you get to see like the process of the illustrations and
yeah,
all that.
yeah.
But yeah,
So yeah,
usually
back to
they're
2022, 2023. If it would come in fall 22, summer 23 is like maybe 6-7 months. So that would be like a crash.
Yeah,
And it would be like it would need to have a really good reason for it to come out in summer 23, where we think like, okay, this is like where we're going to get the most readers, or it ties into this anniversary. So that editorial schedule would be more tight.
yeah.
So I would probably give the author like a month and a half to get me a revision, or maybe 2 months, and then I would have to go back right away. But we would go into it knowing that we had a shortened timeline, and
Right.
we would have to weigh if it was worth the pressure to get it out in a certain season.
That makes sense. Yeah.
But usually a production schedule can happen 9-10 months.
Okay.
Ideally a year.
A year. Nice. Okay, that's good to know. And so obviously before the editorial process, there's a submission process.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about why it's important for authors and agents to follow submission guidelines?
Yeah, I mean, I've never had an issue with an agent not following submission guidelines,
Okay.
because like they're an agent and they should know how it all works. But I think that's why it's really important for authors to have an agent, so someone who understands the system. Also, when you're reps, it's just like more visibility, like the credibility of the agency, is something that can get you seen. And agents know how to pitch books to editors. So when I see something on submission, like I'm expecting a certain way for it to be described, or maybe a certain agent just really good at making something sound amazing, and maybe I'll stop reading the other stuff I had in because it sounds so good and so up my alley. Right. So agents know how to write pitches. Yeah, and they offer that credibility of having that establishment behind you, someone who's going to understand when it comes to making a deal and percentages and the royalties and everything. It's just a lot if you're not in the industry to understand. So,
Sure.
yeah. Did you have anything in particular in mind when you mentioned submission guidelines?
No, just I'm glad that you answered it that way, because a lot of folks, want to know every step of the process. And it's like there's certain things where it's just like,
Yeah.
ask your agent, right? And
Mm-hmm. That's their job.
that's their job, right? Like you're supposed to know the submission guidelines to submitting to agents, but you don't necessarily have to like know the submission guidelines for publishing houses.
Yeah.
So yeah, thank you. And we do these talks with agents as well. For anyone who's tuning in live, we are having agents at our conference that's coming up this September. So that will be a great way to connect with some agents, and that way you have them backing you when it comes time for submission. Cool. So one more question, well, two more questions about submission. What is the significance of the slush pile in the publishing industry, and how do submissions typically progress from there?
Yeah. So I guess this kind of goes into title a bit. So if someone is like a senior editor or an executive editor, they get a lot of stuff in because at their level, like they've been in the business a while and people know their tastes, and they can probably buy things for a little bit more money because of their title. Like they've been proven to be able to sell books, right? So they've had those agent relationships for a while, so they get the heavy hitters in. But they also get in a lot of stuff. And I guess just like the flow of submissions, it's called a slush pile, right? And usually at that level, that person has an assistant, and it's usually the assistant's job to like help them read, because you're just getting so many things that it's impossible for one person to read it all in a timely manner. And usually the assistant finds something in the slush pile, right? And brings it to the senior editor, executive editor's attention. As an editor, I'm just an editor. Everything is like a submission. Nothing is slush, because, at my level, it's like I'm looking for the big books, right?
Right.
So there is like no tier. Everything's a potential get. But as you become, I guess, more renowned and stuff, it's like certain things fit your level, right? And the rest is considered slush. And then you're mining the slush for gold. Basically, that's the thinking.
That's so interesting. And I also heard like there's certain houses, like Chronicle Books, where they do accept unagented submissions. They're like one of the few that do. And because you're unagented, your submission automatically goes into the slush pile. And I think once a month, all of the like editorial assistants like go through that slush pile together collectively and try to, like you said, find gold in it. So another reason to make sure that you have an agent, so that hopefully your stuff is sent directly to an editor and not put in the slush pile that's not viewed as often. Cool. Okay. So could you clarify the meaning of terms like manuscript format and word count and whether they matter for submissions?
Manuscript format, I think that's maybe more related to nonfiction, where it's like maybe you have a proposal and then you have sample chapters, and you have about the author and maybe some relevant links, some comps that the agents and the author is comping the title to. I think when it comes to nonfiction, format is more important. If someone is an expert or an academic in a certain field, I think a lot of the time is spent proving their expertise. Like this person is the perfect person to write about this topic, and this is why.
Right.
And then it's like sample chapters, which are actually very important because it shows us if you can actually write.
Right. Yeah, you might be expert in your field, but you might not be a writer.
Yeah. And then the time spent proving your argument, like is this even something that we could see selling? Is this like something that people are thinking about? Is this a topic that's going to break out? So there's all sorts of ways to structure a nonfiction proposal, depending on what the topic is.
Makes sense.
But when it comes to fiction, it's just like, send me your novel. Send me your novel.
And so like, does it have to follow like a specific format in the sense that like the first page is just the title and the author's name, and then the next page is a table of contexts or like the chapters, and then it's the novel?
Yeah, it doesn't have to be super formatted where it's like, we're going to do that work if we buy it, we're going to send to production, they're going to format it, but it should just be clear, like a title page, like I need to know what the title is. Yeah. And chapters, broken up by chapters. You don't have to have a table of contents.
Interesting.
Yeah, as a fiction editor, I'm just seeing if I'm into your story. Like, I don't think you need to get hung up on formatting of it, as long as it just like follows the typical word layout.
Yeah, that's interesting. And again, my expertise is in picture books, so there is a specific format when it comes to picture books when you're querying an agent. And for any picture book folks out there, usually the format is like the title, your name, the word count, and then your manuscript. And some agents, some editors like it to be paginated. So they like to know, like, okay, so this is happening on page 4 or 5, this is happening on page 6, 7 kind of thing.
Yeah, maybe I was a little bit too loose and free, but yeah, having page numbers would help, you know? It's just, you know, I thought like a basic way of like understanding where you are in the story. But just like the standard formatting, which includes to me page numbers and
Page
like
numbers.
chapters. If you have chapter titles, that's fine. If you don't, chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3 is
1, 2,
also
3.
pretty good.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm again probably seeing a standard because I see it all the time, but if you're just starting out, you might not know what it is.
Right. And you know, there's a lot of folks that tune into our sessions that have more skin in the game and that have been that are familiar, but there's a lot of folks that don't. So that's why we like to I like to like share those tidbits also from my personal experience. And
Right.
it's always interesting and how it changes per like genre. So like I didn't know about the nonfiction stuff, and I'm like, but that makes a lot of sense. So cool. And in terms of word count, does it matter for submissions?
It does. It really does. If you're writing a proposal, which is like nonfiction, you're talking about what the book will be and sample chapters and what makes you qualified to write it. We also kind of need to know like what your estimated word count is, like how many pages it'll be at the end of the day. Like if it's going to be 200 pages, it's going to be valued differently than 300 and something. If it's going to be 500 pages, it's going to be like, oh, that's tough to edit. It's a lot of pages. Do I want to do that?
Tough to sell too. People.
Yeah, exactly. Who's going to pick up a 500-page book?
Right. People are super busy these days.
Yeah. So that's helpful to know. And for fiction, that helps us with our pricing. It helps us like understand like how the book needs to move to be able to hold that intrigue for maybe 300 and something pages.
Yeah.
If a novel is like 400 pages, it needs to be really propulsive to keep people into it for 400 pages. So maybe as an editor, you're reading more to see like, does this hold my attention? And will it, if I were maybe able to do X, Y, and Z, would it still like be able to hold my attention at 400 pages?
Right. That makes sense. And the word count depends on, you know, the genre, but also like, you know, if you're writing like sci-fi and, you know, you do have to, those do tend to be a little bit on the longer side because of the, you know, the world building and all that stuff. But it needs to make sense. It needs to be like you said, it needs to hold people's attention. So make sure you pay attention to your word counts, folks. All right. So next question. What does the term advance mean in publishing? And how does it factor into an author's contract?
Sure. An advance is what the author is going to be paid for their work. So let's say I get a novel in and I pay $100,000 for it. That's the author's advance. And depending on the house, it's usually split up into quarters, which I think is the more standard way to do it. But sometimes it could be split up into thirds if you have a really great agent who can make your case for you and get it split in thirds. But yeah. And usually the payment structure is broken down by the on-signing, when you sign the contracts, when you turn in the completed manuscript, like the final that's going to be sent to production, that's another payment. And then when it's released, the on sale date, and then usually 12 months afterwards, you get your final payment.
Interesting.
Yes. Maybe other houses do it slightly differently, or maybe it could be negotiated slightly differently depending on what the circumstances are, but that's generally the breakdown.
That's good to know. I know for picture books, it usually comes down to one of two options. So for some houses, you get paid half upon signing the contract, and then you get the other half upon the final edits being accepted. And then the illustrator takes it over and does their thing. Other houses split it up into 3 payments. So you get 1/3 upon signing the contract, 1/3 upon the final edits being received, and then 1/3 when the book is actually published. So like on publication date, basically. So that's super interesting that for novels, you'll also get it like 12 months after. Didn't know that. Okay, so we talked about advances. can you explain the concept of royalties and how they're coming
Sure.
for authors?
Sure. So I am not a math person, so I'm going to try my best. I've been in the game forever, but I'm not going to say I understand it 100%.
That's fair.
There are certain royalties that the author gets after they earn out their advance. So let's say I paid $100,000, going back to that example. Once the house gets that $100,000 back with sales, anything else the book is made is turned into a royalty for the author. So the author gets a share of whatever profit is made after that advance is paid back. So you've earned back, you've paid the house back for the $100,000 they gave you, and your book it's still selling out there. You're maybe going to get either 10% of a hardcover, 25% of a trade paperback, and maybe 10% of audiobook of every version that is sold after the advance is paid back. And that's a royalty.
That makes sense. And for picture books, usually you'll get 5% as an author, unless you're the author illustrator. In that case, you get closer to 10% as well. Because for picture books, the author gets 5% and then the illustrator gets 5%. So you'll see that variation there as well. And in terms of earning out your advance, to earn out their advance, like if the book sells for $20, the author doesn't get the full $20 credit for it, right?
No, they don't. So the house gets a cut of that. Yeah.
So basically, just for the folks that don't know, when you're trying to earn out your advance, you're getting paid a percentage of the sale. And so even if you sell 1,000 books, you're not getting like the actual like price of the 1,000.
Right.
Your share of that 1,000.
Yeah.
And then so on and so forth.
So when that all adds up to you earning out, then
right.
Yeah.
And that's when you'll see like on social media, like either on, Instagram or something, you'll see like authors like doing a little happy dance when they finally earn out, because it's like, woo, they did it, like so that's what that all means. Actually, one quick question related to advances. From your experience, how like likely or common is it for authors to earn out their advance?
It doesn't usually happen. It doesn't usually happen because of like the market nowadays. Speaking for like the adult sphere, I feel like maybe the children's a little bit different because your advances are a little bit smaller.
Yeah.
But usually to be competitive, especially as someone in a top 5 house, usually we're paying like anywhere from like $50K to, I don't know, $300K for one novel. And speaking of what we just discussed, like what it takes to earn out your advance, you need to earn that out before you get royalties.
Right.
So it gets super competitive. If it's something hot that everybody wants, we all want to pay more because we want to win and we think like it'll be good, and it's really hard to get something good in.
And then you get stuck on calls with agents for auctions.
Yeah. I mean, it's something that we all really need to think about, because it's like we're paying this money and like people are not earning out and the final P&Ls are not looking good. And it's like, if they want to do another book, well, we lost money on that. Do we really want to? Yeah. It's just like a cycle, right? So, but it's also, if you don't pay that money, you don't get the book.
Right.
But yeah, so usually people don't
find that balance.
Yes, people don't earn out. I wish that agents would be more reasonable and like be forward thinking. Like, yes, it'd be great to have money, but it'd also be great to really establish this author in this place where like they have a good track. The editor can make a case for them for their next book, but money.
That's fair. Yeah, for picture books, an average advance is about $5K. And if you're just the author, you get 5%, which comes out to about 50 cents a book. So you still have to sell a decent amount of books to get back that 5K. So yeah, it's definitely it's interesting. It's like, I remember like my like talking to my agent and being like, can I just get a slightly smaller like advance and more on like a higher royalty? Like, I feel like, but it's sometimes hard to negotiate that kind of stuff because I feel like the royalty is pretty standard.
It is. I don't remember anything that came in that we changed royalty over.
Yeah.
It has to be like really, really big fish, very, very competitive, like maybe $1 million stuff that we would consider changing a royalty rate for.
Yeah. And that's why, at least in my opinion, like I think that's why agents they're like, we can't really negotiate the royalty that much. So the one piece that we can really try to negotiate and leverage is that advance number.
Right.
So
basically making peace with like never earning out.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So it's all very interesting. Okay, and we're approaching on time, so I have just a few more questions. We haven't gotten any audience questions, but that's fine. We do have a lot of folks that signed up that will probably watch this later, because some people might still be at work and stuff. So how do editors and publishers approach the negotiation process for book deals, including advances and royalty rates? I feel like we talked about that already, but is there anything else that from an editor's perspective is important during the negotiation process?
Yeah, so when I'm making my case on what to pay for something, a large part of that is comparative titles. So my numbers that I put into the sheet that spits out what a good advance would be is based off of what those comparative titles made, right? Because if we're saying that this book is like this, we're saying we think it'll sell like this one too, right? So if it's a romance and it's about maybe, I don't know, meeting someone in a bookstore to meet cute, it's like something very sweet. I'm looking for books that are similar in tone and have sold within the past 3 years.
Okay.
To capture the market, which could be really, really tough. Sometimes something is really, really perfect and it was just like a year out of date for that 3-year mark and you can't use it.
Interesting.
Yeah. So once I put those numbers in that sheet that I put, the sales estimates, or not the sales estimates, what the books actually made, that I'm comparing the title to, it'll tell me what is an advance that is reasonable, right? And that's how I determine what my number is. Now, of course, if you really, really want something, you could stretch the comps a bit, like, okay, this is kind of like this in this way.
Right.
And yeah, that's how we
Interesting.
do it.
Yeah, like I always knew comps were important when it came to pitching to agents and editors from a perspective of like helping them figure out what it's like and where it falls, and maybe this one is a good comp because of the themes or things like that. But I didn't actually know that the comps were also taken into account when it comes to figuring out the price for the book. So that's super interesting. And do you usually like use the comps that the author or that the agent gives you, or do you use your own comps as well too?
I definitely like really appreciate whenever a submission comes in with comps because it's very, very helpful. Sometimes they're not useful. Sometimes it's like the agent trying to like get the most money that they can, where it's just like, yeah, this needs a lot of work. I don't see myself paying this for that. And I don't know how that book came in, but the end result was amazing. It was a great read. And maybe I think that this could get there, but it's not there yet. So I wouldn't pay that money.
That makes sense.
Right? Like a lot of the comps that the agents send are aspirational because like they know that we based our numbers off of comps.
I'm learning. I didn't know that. That's so crazy.
Yeah. So I usually end up having to look for my own comps.
Your own. Okay. That makes sense. Yeah. Like for me as an author, I think of my comps related to like the book's themes and like the topics that it explores and things like that. Not necessarily from a financial standpoint, but now that I know that, I'm definitely.
Oh no, you shouldn't.
I can't help it. Now I know, and I'm like, okay, I have to think about these comps a little bit more.
Yeah.
Cool. That's really good to know. Okay, and so the infamous questions, we always get questions about marketing and promotion. So had to sneak that in here. How do publishing houses approach marketing and promotions for books? And how does that relate to an author's contract terms?
Right. So I guess when it comes to contract stuff, it would really only apply if the person's a celebrity or something, and we have something in the contract like you have to make yourself available 4 weeks before publication. Maybe you have to agree to at least X amount of media appearances. Like you're really putting it in the contract because a large part of the reasoning of why we paid what they paid is because
you're a celebrity.
You're a celebrity. So we expect you to use your celebrity to sell the book, right?
Right.
So we put that in the contract because you'd be surprised by how celebrities just like, oh, I'm over it. At the end, like it was something I wanted to do, but now like
I crossed it off my bucket list. Yeah.
So that's the contractual piece. When it comes to like the regular person, I don't see marketing publicity being something that's in the contracts. Maybe an agent can try to ask for like a certain percentage of money being allocated to marketing or publicity or something like that, but I haven't seen that.
Okay.
But yeah, I'm forgetting the second part of your question. Basically, like how does marketing publicity work for a book? Yeah. So usually around like the 4-month mark before something is being set to publish, the author would meet with the publicity and marketing team and they would like talk about their marketing publicity plans. And like this is how we see it rolling out. The author fills in a publicity questionnaire where it's just like their inspiration for the book, what their platform is. Not that it's important.
It's so lengthy. I remember like having to copy and paste the questions into a Word doc, well, a Google Doc, because it literally, I feel like the only thing you guys don't ask for is blood type and like the name of my firstborn.
Right. Yeah. Well, the publicity and marketing team is trying to figure out everything they can about you to figure out how many creative ideas they can come up with, like pitching the book, who might be interested in like, who might be a great conversation partner, who might be interested in what you're interested in. Maybe you have a favorite book that's like this person's favorite book and you guys would be great in conversation. So lots of cool questions to get to the heart of what a new and unique plan would be for your particular book.
Makes sense. And so what do you have to say for authors who don't get that marketing meeting? I've heard a lot of authors say they didn't have like a marketing plan or they didn't get to meet with their publicists. Any words of consolation for those folks?
Yeah, every house does it a different way. Maybe it's just like an email where it's just like, hey, like this is what we have plans. Let us know if you have any questions and stuff like that. Yeah, right. I mean, I guess other houses have different ways of doing their thing. But I would say just keep in contact. If you have questions, don't be afraid to ask. If there's things that's on your mind, talk to your editor and have your editor reach out. If you feel like too shy to go ahead and like send a note directly to that publicist and marketer and have them CC you, you know, so you know what's going on if you don't want it to come from you. But as someone who has skin in the game, like this is your baby, is your book, you should definitely not be afraid to ask the questions you have when it comes to marketing and publicity.
Definitely. Yeah, my recommendation is like I tell authors 6 months before your book comes out, reach out to your editor if you haven't had your marketing meeting and ask them to send you their marketing plan because they do have a marketing plan. They just might not be like transparent about it unless you ask for it.
Yeah.
And that was my experience. I think picture books are a little different that way because they don't allocate as much marketing dollars to like picture books as they do to like adult and like YA. But they do have a marketing plan and it's important for you to ask for that so that you can ask them any questions, but then also this way you can prioritize what you're going to focus on. So if your publisher is working on getting you trade reviews and taking you to conferences and things like that, maybe you focus on, you know, like having a really successful launch event in which that sells a decent amount of books, or maybe you're focusing on school visits or speaking engagements and things like that. So this way you can complement your publishing house's marketing plan Because if you know what they're doing, you're not going to duplicate those efforts, and then you can focus on other stuff. At least that's been my experience. It's been helpful to know, like, okay, I can expect them to do this. They're gonna submit my book for awards. They're gonna submit my books for this and that and whatever, so I can focus on school visits.
Right.
And nailing those in, because at least for a picture book author and for like in the kidlit space, school visits is a great way to sell books. So something to think about. All right, my last question is, what role does the acquisition editor play in the publishing process, and how do you collaborate with authors and other stakeholders?
Can you repeat the first part again?
Yes. What role does the acquisition editor play in the publishing process, and how do they collaborate with the author and other stakeholders? I feel like we talked about this a little bit already, but is there anything else that an editor has?
Yeah, I guess I can expand on how you mentioned the editor being the liaison between all the people in-house.
Yeah.
The editor is very much involved in everything, the production process. We send you the various passes from production, first pass, second pass, which is when something has been copy edited and been reviewed, and we send it back to the author for their review, just to make sure everything is the way they want it. They agree with the changes the copy editor makes. So as the editor, I'm the one sending you that, and you're sending me back your revisions. I'm sending it back to production. Whenever Art sends me something, I'm sending it to you to see what you think and passing it back on to Art. So basically, the editor is your point of contact for all other places in-house.
Yeah, everything.
You're just there with the book
from your lifeline. Yeah. Sorry, what was that?
I was just saying we're with the project from the beginning to the end. So
yeah, and not just the end, but like once it's out in the world as well.
Yes.
My editor was my main point of contact when it came to anything marketing related as well. So your editor is your lifeline. Make sure you treat your editor with lots of love, because they're doing everything. They're doing all the things. All right. On that note, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you for everyone that's online, but most importantly to you for your time. As we have all heard, editors have a lot on their plate, so we appreciate you and are grateful for the time that you spent with us. All writers, booksellers, and book lovers in the room, we have many more resources for you, so be sure that you visit our website and fill out that form that I put in the chat if you have any specific requests for upcoming Writing Paths workshops. I also want you all to save the date for our virtual Margins Conference, which is taking place September 9th until the 14th. And our in-person conference is happening in Denver and will take place September 20th to the 22nd. We build our programs collectively with our community, so feel free to email us as well at info@thewordfordiversity.org if you have any questions. We cannot run these programs without our community's support. We are committed to ensuring that these events remain free and accessible to help ensure that we can continue to do so. If you are able, please support and make a donation to the Word. Thank you for being community with us at the Word. We hope to see you again soon. Bye, everyone.
Bye.